Hey everybody, it's zupermanguy, and I'm here after... It's been about a year. Jesus. And for that I apologize. I wasn't sure if this was going to get back up and running again. And I don't know if there's any one reason why it's getting up and running again, but there's definitely a couple that I can point to. The first of which is a friend of mine from school. Shoutouts to RM. He kept asking if I was gonna do this again, so he showed some interest, and thanks, man. I appreciate it, I really do. The other reason I can point to is my mom actually had me start watching the show The Newsroom. And this sort of leads into the subject of today's podcast, that being America. But she just wanted to show me the first episode, and really even only the first scene of the first episode. And if you've seen it, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, because this first scene is a speech. And it's so beautiful and pointed and perfect. And I'm actually going to read this speech here in a second. And I'll provide a little bit of visual context, because it is the first scene of the show, so there's not a whole lot of context that the audience even has watching the show, so I'm not going to give you guys a whole lot more. But essentially, the character speaking, he's on a panel at a college answering questions from students. He's up on a panel as a newsman with two politicians, and the moderator... Well, a student asks a question, and the other two panelists answer, and the character who's going to give this speech ends up just sort of stepping around answering it, because he's clearly not interested in having an opinion. But eventually, the moderator holds him down and makes him give a legitimate answer to this question. And his answer's just perfect. It's actually just beautiful. And so the response to this question, it starts with sort of the other panelists' answer. Well, one of the other panelists' answers as a footstool, I guess. And the question was, can you say why America is the greatest country in the world? And the student phrases it so that the answer is meant to be short. She says, in a sentence or a few words, can you say why America is the greatest country in the world? And, like, the conservative member of the panel says freedom and freedom as his two reasons why America is the greatest. And, the other columnist, or the other panelist, says diversity and something else. It's a very typical liberal answer. It's what you'd expect. So, I'm going to skip the first few lines because it's like directly speaking to the other panelists. It doesn't really make sense in its own. So, can you say why America's the greatest country in the world? ... Quote, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom, Japan has freedom, the UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So, 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom. And yeah, you sorority girl, speaking to the girl who asked the question, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, There's some things you should know. One of them is, there's absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you, nonetheless, are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever, period. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite? And then at this point, the crowd is just flabbergasted. They're blown back. And he continues, "It sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reason. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reason. We waged wars on poverty, not on poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great, big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore." End quote. And hopefully you can see why that made me want to talk a little bit, because Jesus, that is some fine points being made. Just holy hell. And if you were caught off guard by the F word in there, sorry, I imagine you're all adults. So that made me want to talk about America a little bit. I spoke with my mom briefly after she had me watch this, and there was some interesting insight to have, and but a lot of the reason I want to have this talk now is because the 2016 presidential election, it seems like we know who's going to be in the general election. It seemed obvious before, but now it's more or less set in stone. It's I think yesterday actually, Hillary Clinton it was finally decided that she was not going to be indicted for whatever she did regarding private supposedly, well, emails that were supposed to be secure being kept on an insecured private server. And long ago, it was decided that Trump was going to be the Republican candidate. So it seems like if ever there was a time to say something, it might be now. And I'm not the only person who feels the need to say something. I'm beyond certain of that. But I think we might have a problem of the actual silent majority here. Both Clinton and Trump and anyone fucking else will claim they have the ear of the silent majority. And I think the silent majority knows that's not true. So let's talk about the election for a moment, because this election really does capture the zeitgeist. And that's your vocabulary word for the day. It's the spirit of the times, essentially, is zeitgeist. So let's talk about the election. I feel like both candidates are simply awful, and the American people have a right to be outraged, to be simply infuriated that this is what it's come to. This is what supposedly the greatest democracy on the planet has given us. And I don't think I'm alone in saying it's simply not acceptable. I don't know what we could do, but Jesus, we gotta do something. And, so, supposedly, Hillary Clinton is a liberal, a progressive. Supposedly, Donald Trump is conservative, a Republican. And I think anybody who knows some political science knows that that's barely the case, if at all. I don't study political science. Ask a friend, do some research. I don't want to just tell you to look everything up. I feel bad about that, but I just don't know enough. I'm sorry. And I am going to do a little bit of drawing back to some historical figures, and because I think we all know that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are both historical figures right now, and not in a good way. Just in a, Jesus, can our country survive such monumental ineptitude in its political system, at the top of its political system? And right now nobody has the answer. I think we'll probably muddle through, and ideally nothing will change. But things up in the air as they are on who the actual president's going to be. It's probably worth noting, I don't think it's going to make that big a difference. I think they're both just utterly unacceptable. And for different reasons. Well, there's an interesting parallel that I'm going to draw between these two candidates here. And each of them represents the extremes of America's issues today. And we'll start with Trump, because I guess he's the easier of the two, although they're both kind of low-hanging fruit. But Trump has a following, there's no denying it, and that means there are people who identify with Trump, that he is saying things people want to hear and believe in their heart of hearts. And that's a problem. It's half the problem with America today. And my issues with Trump are that, first of all, he's a bigot, he's a racist, and he's a misogynist. Anybody who says otherwise needs only look at a different news source than whatever you are looking at, because anyone else will agree that he is a bigot, a racist, and misogynist. And the fact that he has supposedly a 50-50 shot of being America's president, everyone knows it's not actually 50-50, because that's not how democracy really works. But he's one of two choices. And Jesus, that's a problem. But beyond that, Trump personifies American capitalism in a way it's kind of impressive. Because he's what some people would call a successful businessman. And I just think that means people as a whole need to change their metrics for success. Because, sure, while he personally has money, he's just driven people into the ground in the process. And that's not a way to measure success. Someone who is genuinely successful should bring those around them up as they rise. They should be not just independent, selfish bastard. And that's what Trump is. He's a man who has brought himself up and just let everyone else fall away. And that's sort of my issue with American capitalism. It doesn't really encourage any sort of cooperation. And I'm gonna sound like a hippie here, but holy hell, we are all in this together. We as a species need to get together and make this work. Christ. So, I probably have other issues with Trump, but we'll call it there for now. He exemplifies everything that I feel is wrong with American capitalism, as well as just American ignorance. So, there's that. And Hillary, on the other side, is maybe just as bad, depending on how you want to see it. But my issues with Hillary is that, first of all, she seems simply inhuman, and maybe this is me just passing judgment, but she doesn't seem honest in anything she does. And that's... So, the two pieces of America are the economy and, I guess, democracy, the political system. That's ludicrous oversimplification, and I feel a little bit bad about it, but we're going to power through. And if Trump is what's wrong with the economy, Hillary is definitely what's wrong with the political system. She's seemingly inhuman in the way she goes about her business, and that's not me saying she doesn't care for people. It just seems like everything she does is with an ulterior motive. There's no honesty in anything she says. And I do want to say something about Trump and honesty, and that's that some people praise Trump for supposedly speaking his mind. And there's a difference between having an opinion and, one, being a bigot, racist, or misogynist, and two, just being this sort of horrific, amorphous fairweather fan where he just panders to the lowest common denominator. Like, he's actually benefiting from willful ignorance in the American population. And if that's not a problem for you, it's certainly one for me. But back to Hillary. She just reeks of politician and lawyer. And I actually touched on this on the last podcast a year ago. And it's that we don't trust lawyers as a people. And it's for a bunch of reasons, but largely it's that sometimes they make money defending people who are guilty. And that's not how justice works. Admittedly, there's no way for us to know beyond a shadow of a doubt if a person is or is not guilty, and that's why the system of law is what it is. And there's not a whole lot that can be done to fix that. But as a lawyer, there's some expectation that sometimes you just know that you're going to be defending somebody who maybe killed a person. Or certainly who is guilty of whatever they're being charged with. And that's screwy. But, so that's why some people don't trust lawyers. The other reason just being, they appear to be just money-grubbing scumbags lots of times. I have pretty minimal dealings with lawyers myself, so lawyers don't hate me. I hope you're not like this, but if you are, I hate you. Don't be a money grub. But, so Hillary just, I don't know if she practiced law, I should probably look into that, but she seems like a lawyer. in that everything she does is brutally cold and calculated and willful in such a way as to be manipulative, not just willful as in she believes in what she's saying. Because it doesn't seem like she does most of the time. And maybe that's just me misreading her, but that's how it comes across. And beyond that, she exemplifies a lot of what really looks like corruption in the American political system. I'm not just going to outright say that American democracy is corrupt, but it really looks like it sometimes, and especially with this failure to indict Hillary, it's really starting to look like things might just be a little bit skewed in her favor. And I don't know what she did. I don't know that there is legal precedent. I'll post a link. There is legal precedent for somebody keeping confidential email on a private, unsecured server and facing legal repercussions for it. There's legal precedent. I'll post a link. So, I don't know if Hillary did exactly that, but I don't think anybody ever felt like she was really in any danger. And that seems messed up, because she was under investigation from the FBI, and it never really put her in a bad light for a lot of people. And that's weird to me. Every politician who's undergone any kind of serious investigation immediately has no credibility. And that's probably, well, that's might be a little bit screwy by itself, because there's probably some time in the past where some politician underwent investigation and wasn't guilty. But maybe not. Politics is kind of gross. But beyond the legal system being skewed in her favor, Hillary, she's actually a member of a political dynasty. Her husband was the president. And he got impeached. There was a call to vote. I'm going to look into that too. But he cheated on her. There was no doubt that he, regardless of what he was like as a politician, I personally think he was a pretty okay president, but my knowledge is pretty limited. But he was not a good husband. He just wasn't. And it didn't really damage him. And maybe it shouldn't, but I feel like it should have done more than it did. So that's how I feel about these candidates. One of them just exemplifies the worst in people, those who are afraid of people who are literally a different color from them, which is all kinds of messed up. It's like, just go understand DNA for like a quarter of a second. Because what's the number? It's like 99.99% of all human DNA is identical. There's something like 0.01% of your DNA is yours. The rest of it belongs to friggin' everybody. And if you have a problem there, we got issues. Because you're probably a racist. And the other one exemplifies why money and power consolidated in a small group of people is a problem. Because it means she appears to be above the law. Which doesn't make any sense. That's not how America is supposed to work. And I'm gonna take a moment, and Nixon famously spoke for the silent majority, and he coined the term. And chances are Nixon did not actually speak for the silent majority, but the silent majority is definitely a thing that exists. There are many, many people in America who have a problem with the way things are today, but they're not going to protest. These are people with day jobs who have to go be adults on every day, and they don't have time to be a political activist too. They have to be a parent or a caregiver, or hell, they just have to keep paychecks coming in. Anything. There's lots of reasons why somebody might belong to the silent majority. But please, for the love of God, if you think you belong to the silent majority and I misspeak, say something. I know it kind of defeats the purpose of the whole silent majority thing, but say something. Hell, say it to me, and I'll try to say something. But so, what I think the silent majority is today, that being July of 2016, is that it's the people in America who see the problems that I see with my limited knowledge and limited scope. See the problems that I see and are as frustrated as I am, but they don't feel like they have any power. And supposedly that power comes in voting, but who do you vote for when you hate what are apparently the options? Where you as a citizen no longer have power when you can't pick anything you want. It's so unbelievably stuck between a rock and a hard place that there needs to be a stronger metaphor that means the same thing. And so, the silent majority, it's, to my eyes, it's the people who have just sadly accepted what appears to be the political reality. And I can't blame them. Things seem to be really bad right now. And these are the people who recognize that the zeitgeist is fear. Everybody is afraid of something. And these are people who either were alive to see it or just sort of intuitively feel it in our country's bones. That America used to be truly progressive, the way I've described it before, as desiring progress. The status quo for America used to be a direction, and it was forward. And that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore. For both political realities that exist today, those who speak out in favor or in opposition to them speak out of fear, at least it seems to me. For the conservatives, well, this is unfair to conservatives, but for the Trump supporters, the fear it's a xenophobia. It's a fear of the unknown. And it's a fear of people who don't look like you. They think that there are bad guys in the world that want to kill them personally. And I don't know what to say. That's just not the case. There are there are people in Syria who have bad guys after them who want to kill them personally in Syria. And we're telling them that they can't come to our country. I'm flabbergasted. I am blown away that that mindset is not only acceptable, but it has a following, a large following, with a political candidate who has has the best chance of 2 people on the planet to be the president of the United States. And it just doesn't make any sense. It's a fear that's grounded in a reality that doesn't exist. And this isn't me just hating on people who like Trump. People who support Hillary are equally fearful, but of things that maybe make even less sense. For the people who support Hillary, the people who are loud in their support of Hillary, there are definitely people who are in support of Hillary just to avoid supporting Trump, and that's sort of a weird middle ground that I'm not even going to comment on that. It's bizarre. As much as I understand it, it kind of hurts my soul, because I personally don't accept that I should have to vote for one of these people, both of whom I hate, neither of whom I want to see as president. So, hate's the wrong word. I really just don't want to see them as president. I don't feel either of them are good people, and that's why. But the Hillary bulldogs, the people who are loud and aggressive in their support of Hillary, are afraid of having an opinion. And it's so very strange that that's the case, because it's inherent in the human experience to have an opinion. But these are the people that shout about, they make everything an issue of racism, of sexism, of any kind of prejudice, because they're so afraid that somebody might be put out. And in some respect, I understand, don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but it hits a point where it's like, Jesus, it's okay. We're all adults. They'll move on with their lives if you disagree with them. And this sort of bleeds into this bizarre mentality of being a good person, which I don't think you're a good person if you just don't hurt anybody's feelings. I don't think that really makes you a person at all. If you don't take a stance, then you aren't anything. You're just a body walking around. You don't have there's no actual belief system associated with not having an opinion. You can't. That's not how anything works. And I don't think that this utter lack of belief is genuine. I think it's an especially bizarre facade that's been put up to try to not offend people, and to appear wholly altruistic and benevolent. And that just isn't the case. Humans have a survival instinct, and until you're a parent, it says look out for yourself. And I'm okay with that. I accept that that's part of being a human. I'm looking out for number one. I won't even kid about it. I help when I can, but above all else, I'm the most important to me. And if that makes me sound like a selfish asshole, then fine. There are lots of people in my life who I care about, but I come first. Sorry. And I think that's how humans work. I don't think it's just me. So, this in contrast to seeming what people used to be like, where they had scruples and took a stance, but it wasn't a fearful stance. It was, I believe in these things, and I will stand behind them until I die. And we've stepped away from that, and maybe I'm idealizing the past, but we're about at time. I'll be back soon. This isn't done. I have more to say. Hope you enjoyed listening. Please tune in to see what else I have to say. If you like this, say something. See you soon.